He makes me laugh.
This is me going on the record saying that There Will Be Blood is my favorite movie. Notice here how I hold for applause. I am holding for applause. Sometimes the film bros are right, but sometimes the brothers are wrong. What do you mean you don't like Penelope 2006? What do you mean you don't like this modern fairy tale wherein James McAvoy plays piano longingly and Christina Ricci participates in bar games? What's not to like? The more I think about There Will Be Blood, the more I like it. And boy, have I thought about it. I don't know why I was holding that half-star hostage. What, does Daniel not call HW a bastard from a basket enough times?
Bastard from a basket. Bastard from a basket. Bastard from a basket!
No. He certainly does. There Will Be Blood is my first favorite movie of adulthood. It's given me similar joy in my 20s as Harry Potter, Divergent, Hunger Games, Twilight gave me in my tweens. Do you understand the gravity of what I'm saying? This is high praise. You may be like, oh no, Liv, those movies are silly, but I feel like I grew up in the golden age of YA cinema. Started with the wave of High School Musical in 2006 and ended with Maze Runner in 2014. I didn't know anything could top or match this era, and quite frankly, that would be too much to ask. Until... what was that? What was that? Many have co-opted the legacy of this film as a wide-reaching, dramatic American epic, and I think that's wrong. Or at least close-minded. There is no universe where I don't find Daniel Plainview telling Eli he can sit down again while smacking steak between his teeth very, very funny.
You can sit down again.
You can sit down again. Waving his steak around like Eli's evil fairy godmother. I don't think I ever found this character chilling. In fact, Daniel Plainview in recent viewings has morphed, perhaps in like a Frankenstein's monster never was supposed to see the light of day kind of way, into a comfort character for me. I don't know, doesn't it give you a warm and fuzzy feeling inside watching someone be really good at their job? Does competence not set your spirit alight? The grocery store worker who can seamlessly deal with your coupons. The Target packer fitting an unprecedented amount of baby carrots in a single cardboard box. Daniel Day-Lewis playing this character. I would characterize the competence that Daniel Day-Lewis exhibits here as existing on the molecular level. No matter where you look, there is always something going on, some choice being made, no matter what corner of his face or movement of his body, because he is embodying the character to that degree. I don't doubt, if he entertained it, that Danny Day could tell you what Danny Plain's order would be at the Taco Bell, what snacks he gravitates towards at Trader Joe's, which Wonka movie is his favorite. Well, he's a villain with a violently manifesting god complex, so the Tim Burton one probably, right? Something about this silly little man just makes me laugh, so I will now share Daniel Plainview's top 5 funniest moments. Number 5, he likes to rub things in. Now, even if you haven't seen this movie, all you need to know about Daniel Plainview is that he's an oil man.
I'm an oil man.
He's only concerned with the ocean of oil underneath our feet. How he can get it out of the ground and turn a profit. He'll do just about anything to get what he wants, and he'll make others feel worse about themselves along the way. That's his philosophy. We see this manifest first in how he treats bread.
Bread.
Now, bread is a food made of flour, yeast, and water. Bread is also something Daniel Plainview will use against you if given the opportunity. The majority of our story takes place in the quiet Californian town of Little Boston. Well, quiet until our main character shows up and strikes oil at the Sunday family's ranch. Daniel Plainview knew to pursue the Sunday family ranch because Paul Sunday told him so.
We have oil and it seeps through the ground. Just give me $500 in cash right now and I'll tell you where it is.
He knows that nothing grows there because Paul Sunday told him so.
It's a goat farm, I told you. Nothing grows but weeds.
So what does Daniel do when he arrives? Under the ruse of being on a camping trip with his son, he asks if they have bread.
Do you have bread?
We have potatoes.
Raise your sourdough loaf to a pro-bread king.
I'm sorry, we don't have any bread. Corn just doesn't fill out in the hills here. It's mostly rock.
He already knows that, but the Sunday family can't know that he's already spoken to Paul. That would ruin the whole swindling them out of their land without disclosing the very valuable asset they are sitting on top of thing. No, he makes them feel like shit hosts for not having bread, and then turns around and is like, actually, I'd like to buy your land. See, my boy is sick and he needs fresh oil air. He needs fresh air. And I've been around and found that, well, your air with the goats and the rocks and all is some of the freshest. Super fresh. By putting Abel Sunday in an inferior position from the start, it seems all the more greater for Daniel to then see something valuable in this land.
The Lord has sent this man here, Eli,
Yes, I believe he has.
Knock him down so he'll feel lifted up by a business proposition. The bread manipulation doesn't stop there. See, in each place that Daniel drills for oil, he holds conference with the townsfolk, with the sole purpose of making them feel better about him, a lying, competition-obsessed, money-hungry capitalist, now working in their community. Like a traveling circus performer, he moves town to town with this act, and in Little Boston, oh, you can bet he brings up bread.
Bread. Let's talk about bread. Abomination to consider that any man, woman, or child in this magnificent country of ours should have to look upon a loaf of bread as a luxury.
If you guys let me drill here, we can share in the wealth together. And in your town specifically, it seems like wealth, very importantly, would be bread. And I'm sure we could snag a dinner roll or two for you fine people. Daniel doesn't care that these people get bread. He talks about them building a school in Little Boston because the children are the future that we strive for. Meanwhile, his son, HW, can't even read, can't even discern which direction the letters go. And you know what we don't see for the rest of the movie, ever? A single person eating bread. You know what we do see, though, is Daniel accumulating more and more and more wealth. This is a psychological rubbing in, so to speak, and then there's also physically rubbing Eli into mud. Eli Sunday, twin brother of Paul, son of Abel, is the town preacher, and he very quickly develops a feud with Daniel. He sees Daniel for the manipulative oil tycoon sinner that he is, while Daniel sees Eli for the fraudulent spiritual figurehead that he is, pretending to rid people of their afflictions, claiming to remove arthritis from their very hands.
Oh, that was one goddamn hell of a show.
Daniel and Eli see each other for what they truly are. Performers, whose act is going to upstage the other. Their power struggle usually manifests in Daniel just not doing what Eli wants him to do, while Eli irritably struts across the land. Things come to a head when Daniel finally strikes oil, but his son's eardrums get blown out. Not that he actually cares that this happened.
What are you looking so miserable about? There's a whole ocean of oil under our feet.
HW okay?
No, he isn't.
But you can bet that he will use it to his advantage.
Aren't you a healer and a vessel for the Holy Spirit? When are you coming over and make my son here again?
To an outsider, his reaction is probably justified. Eli's whole thing is falsely saying he can heal people of their ailments, but I know there is no way Daniel is not just using this to lash out for all the other times he was more irritated. And of course, his preferred method of delivery for the blow. I mean, Daniel Plainview could punch you for sure, but I don't think a punch would mean enough to him. He'll slap you a few times because he's petty, and then he'll shove you into the dirt, into the mud, like the bug that he wishes to squash, the vermin he thinks you are. A top cinematic mud moment for sure, only eclipsed by perhaps The Little Rascals, 1994, Shrek, Jurassic Park. The Jurassic Park mud, I hate to say it, looks a lot like Wonka chocolate to me. Have you ever just wanted to eat movie mud? There's the psychological rubbing in of the bread, the physical rubbing in of the mud, and then finally the financial rubbing in. See, what happens is, years after Daniel bought the Sunday family's land and made his fortune, Eli visits him with the opportunity to drill on the last unsold property of the region from one of his churchgoers who's recently passed away. But Eli, ever the fool, doesn't realize that since Daniel already owned everything around it,
I get what's underneath it.
the oil is not there anymore. Eli thought he had an untouched asset, but actually he has nothing. Nothing against his, assumed gambling debts. The morally dubious preacher who falsified medicinal healing in his community continues to show signs of being morally dubious. So he's feeling terrible. But it isn't enough that he feels terrible. Daniel wants to crush him. He does this by confirming that Paul did sell his family out, as Eli had suspected all those years ago.
You're not the chosen brother, Eli. It was Paul who was chosen. He knew what was there, and he found me. I paid him $10,000 cash in hand.
$10,000? I don't know if that's true.
Here's $500. You tell me something worth hearing. This money's yours.
Oh, he's lying to make him feel worse. Oh, Daniel, you're incorrigible. 500 to 10,000 might not seem like a huge difference, but adjusted for inflation, this lie to Eli is the difference between $9,000 and $180,000. Number 4, his anti-train agenda. Daniel Plainview is quintessentially American, and like any great American, he believes in the preservation of life, liberty, and the pursuit of street parking. The right to traffic. The right to own your own car and sit in it. The right to get up every fine morning and sit on I-90 for anywhere from 25 minutes to an hour and 10 minutes, depending on how many of your fellow Americans had a similar idea. So like any villain with staunchly American ideals, he is anti-public transit. But he's fine with any of these other suckers taking the train for sure. He's anti-train, but for himself. And boy, to hate the train before everybody else hated the train, pretty neat. A man ahead of his time. You're more likely to see Daniel Plainview regress to the transportation method of a singular horse than give the railroads a shot. And rightfully so. Daniel Plainview rolls up to Little Boston, sets up a tent, hunts for quail, gives a speech to his son about the future of their empire with his signature anti-railroad rhetoric.
What we do is we build a pipeline.
Tricks Abel Sunday into selling his family's land, buys up all adjacent property, makes several business calls, all before the next group of prospecting oil men arrive to town. Number 3, he broods in the ocean. In past times, if you weren't feeling well, a doctor would write you a prescription of going to the sea, sending you to shore. Get this wayward woman near some salty air. Daniel Plainview, not so different. Upon realizing that the guy he's been traveling around with, who he thought was his brother Henry, isn't his brother Henry, but just some guy who at one point met Henry, and then Henry died of tuberculosis, so he started cosplaying as Henry. I'm devastated to learn that this dude is just some guy. Daniel lets the realization wash over him, but he doesn't lash out yet. Instead, he walks into the ocean. Fake Henry stays on the beach chillaxing, and then the movie cuts to this. What is that? The Loch Ness Monster? A dozen great whites waiting to chomp fake Henry's head off? Daniel here I actually think is worse than a great white. It's like he's a great white, but if a great white also knew how to use a gun. If I was swimming and I saw a man brooding like this in the water, I would scream for help. Throw me one of those inflatable tubes. I am in distress. The lifeguards would have to put up the red flag. Not safe for swimming. Oil tycoon experiencing betrayal in these waters. The fact that his inclination was to just walk into the sea, not unlike the women of Little Women or the mermaid teenagers from H2O Just Add Water. Where's Cleo? Oh, she was upset, so she went into the ocean. Daniel's angry face card goes hard when fake Henry is trying to explain himself later, and this is the face looking back at him. Girlie, the jig is up. You can't be lying flat on your back and chit-chatting. Save yourself. Spoiler alert, he doesn't. Number 2, he's an improviser. In improv comedy, there is a rule of thumb called yes and. When someone introduces a new idea to the scene, you should accept it and try to expand upon it. If you reject someone's idea, you risk stalling the flow of the scene and the audience going, I don't like this feeling. It feels like they aren't working well together. It forces yourself to widen your scope of what a good idea is versus narrowing everybody else to your own expectations. Daniel, on the precipice of achieving his wicked big shot oil man dreams, faces one obstacle: not owning the 50 miles of land that would help lead his pipeline to the sea. And how is he supposed to avoid the railroad's anti-train king if he can't make it to the sea?
What's this? Why don't I own this? Why don't I own this?
I like how in other instances when Daniel wants something, he forces himself to behave politely.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, young lady. Thank you. Thank you, Eli. That's good. That's a good one. Appreciate your help with this. Good enough. My thanks for your visit. Thank you, Eli.
But then when he's frustrated, sometimes his words are reduced to the verbal scribblings of a toddler.
Why don't I own this?
Mine? Why not mine? The man who owns the land that would let Daniel's pipeline go seaward decides to lease it to him on the condition that Daniel is baptized at his church. Daniel counters with $5,000. $5,000 adjusted for inflation is approximately $165,000 not to go to church. That's hilarious. Because considering we're all in the same town here, there's really only one church that he can be talking about. Eli's church. Yikes. This is a yikes for Daniel on many levels. The proverbial weasel preacher rears his old weasel head. And yeah, getting Daniel to kneel in front of his entire congregation, it would behoove Eli to milk this for all it is worth. As far as I can tell from Googling There Will Be Blood script PDF, the scene was supposed to go, Eli slaps him, Eli says some stuff, Eli slaps him again, Eli says even more stuff. But this is not what happens upon viewing.
Out, devil! Out! Get out of this!
Did you notice what was going on? Daniel is adding all these lines in between slaps.
Out, sin! You accept the job! Get out of here!
He's yes-anding Eli. He's making this a game. It's not about meaning what you do. It's not about being sincere. It's about playing Eli's game. Daniel says yes to the idea of being baptized just to make a mockery of it right under his nose. Number 1. He knows how to complete an analogy. In the final moment of the film, Daniel Day-Lewis, as Daniel Plainview, completes the final gesture.
Final gesture.
The gesture being murder with a bowling pin. It was oil mogul Daniel Plainview in his Pacific Coast Mansion's home bowling alley with a bowling pin. Oddly enough, I can't find it on my clue board. And then, of course, Daniel delivers the final line of the movie.
I'm finished.
You know when you see some Shakespeare production and the actor delivers the line in such a way you've never heard before despite seeing the play itself like 1,000 times?
Or not to be.
The kind of line reading that makes you go, oh, that is not what I could have anticipated. Quite a lot of thought went into that. On the page, just looking at it, this sentence reads to me as, I'm finished. I'm done for. Or climbing up a hill to emphasize I'm, only to immediately slip and fall down it into the hole we've dug ourselves on finished. The path of how we say it mirrors our acknowledged defeat. But following this murder, Daniel doesn't speak in a tone that reflects the weight of what he had just done. He's also been around for and a proponent of murder before, but who even were those guys? Laborers? We don't care about laborers. Surely, with the blood of a now famous radio preacher on his hands, justice should be a-comin'. His manservant, perhaps hearing some of the preceding crashing, banging, smashing, pleading, begging, crying, bowling, walks down the stairs to see what's going on, but has a pace that is, very cavalier. Is he limp fishing the handrail? What is going on? After exhibiting the lowest lack of urgency I've ever seen on screen, he calls to his master.
Mr. Daniel?
Daniel says, I'm finished.
I'm finished.
Oh, with what, Daniel? Your porridge? I certainly wouldn't walk into this room assuming a violent killing had just taken place. Your sing-song tone doesn't give the impression of death in the bowling alley. It's not an answer that hints at any sense of regret, remorse, or even self-awareness, but rather emulates the inflection of someone asking a waiter to take their dinner away from the table. I'm finished. His tone also conveniently puts the call to action on the other person. It's not, I'm finished. I must deal with what has just happened. It's, I'm finished. You deal with it. You clean up my mess. I want to go back to eating steak with my hands now, please. It's also a wonderful continuation of something that Daniel yelled at Eli just moments before.
I told you I would eat you.
I told you I would eat you. And now I'm satisfied. I'm done with my meal. Jeeves, take my supper away. And what better way to complete the eating analogy than by actually devouring him? Not with his teeth, but with a bowling pin. Perhaps he doesn't care what's coming for him. He's just happy he got to kill the fly that's been buzzing in his face for years and years and years. He finally got it. Some people say that comedy is tragedy plus time, but here I say comedy is tragedy plus Danny Day's timing. Okay. I'm finished. Hey everyone, so I've got a Patreon now. I've been working on it for quite a bit. I wanted to make sure I had a nice catalog of content for you to rummage through, so it's really worth your while for you to go over there and join. And we have a lot of fun. We laugh. You might see me laugh a few times. It would mean a lot if you could support me over there, of course, and yeah, I look forward to talking to you guys over there.